Hey you, it's Allison. I'm a death doula, grief educator, and coach, as well as an end of life services planner. Today, I want to answer a question that I get quite a bit, and that is, when do I engage a death doula? So the decision to hire an end of life doula is very personal, and it's one that should be discussed early and often between you and your family members or the community that's caring for you, if you're the person that is seeking a death doula for yourself. And it really should be in the same manner of understanding and respect that any other end of life decision is discussed. When you're in the midst of um, expecting your doctors to sort of clarify and explain what's going on physically, emotionally, and spiritually. At the same time, you're not feeling well, or the individual is not feeling well. It's a really hard thing to do, is to navigate all of the complexities of medical care, of spiritual care, of emotional care, all at the same time. We are a holistic person, and when we go through journeys like this, it isn't just one lane, it's multiple, right? And it's multiple dimensions of that. And so having somebody like a death doula who has experience in caring for people at the end of their lives, and they also have the time to sit and be with that person to help them figure out what's going on, can really, really be valuable. And so there's actually four key areas that I often share with people, like, when do you engage a death doula? So the first is the before. And the before really is in the early diagnosis. It could be even just a curious consultation for preparation for what's to come, and before overwhelm happens. Once you start getting into the process of caring for someone, or you're being cared for, it might be too late by then and you're feeling overwhelmed and you're not sure where to start. The best place to start is before all of that happens and engaging a death doula. You can seek consultations on an as needed basis if you want to. The second is the support stage. And this is really all stages of the person's illness. It's when you're in the midst of that and conversations need to be had. So there are cultures and generations that will not talk or do not want to talk about death or planning for death, because the thought, well, one, there's the thought of, if I talk about it, then I'm going to die sooner. Some cultures won't talk about it. It's just kind of taboo. And so a doula, it gets trained in, or should have been trained in, the cultural differences, the generational difference, and the different mindsets that come with coming with death and dying. And a doula can navigate that kind of rocky journey on that. It's also during the times when you're feeling overwhelmed, particularly if you're a caregiver or if you're the person in the midst of needing support in that way. Another way to think about during this support stage is, if there's a lot of decisions that need to be made and you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling indecisive, and you're saying to yourself, I don't even know where to start, so I'm just not going to. The third stage is the right before. And what I mean by that is kind of like the early stages of active dying. So this is usually either right before hospice or early in the hospice stages. It's also during the time where you're experiencing anticipatory grief and decision making. An example of this is, let's say you do have someone that's a loved one that's been diagnosed with dementia. The thing about the different stages of dementia and the different diagnoses under the dementia umbrella, I've often heard people say it is an ongoing death and grieving, because you're losing the person that you knew. And so that anticipatory grief is a wonderful time to engage a doula that can support you through that constant grieving journey. And then also within that right before is providing really anytime that family and community support. And then there's the after. So let's say you don't engage in any of those three previous pillars, but you can hire a doula in the after effect. And so the after pillar. And so that can be after the person has died. Maybe you want to have a wake at home. And here's the thing is, you don't have to have, although I fully support funeral homes, but you don't have to have the wake or the vigil at at a funeral home. In fact, before funeral homes and hospitals were a big part of our medical care, we had we cared for our people in our homes. And there are many cultures who still do that. In fact, there's some cultures that the person's body stays with them for more than a couple of weeks, and there's special care that comes with that. But what's interesting is like some people a doula can help support that process. After it can be the decision making of who do I connect with when we're talking about probate, when we're talking about the legal or the financial matters of the person who is deceased. And then how do I go on as a caregiver or as a family member or community member, and I'm experiencing this deep grief or sense of loss, or maybe I'm even feeling apathetic. A doula can really support you individually as well as a group, and also, supporting the family in multiple ways. Recently, I supported a family in um, planning, emceeing, and following up through the celebration of life. It was a full day of a funeral, celebration of life, and a family gathering at the end of the day. So it was helping coordinate all of that. I even emceed the event and help find a speaker to help find catering, help find any other resources that are needed for that. So a doula can really do a whole lot. Think of it as like your personal assistant through all of this. And they can be a strategic partner, they can be a care partner, and they can be like an objective partner through this whole process. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts when you hear about how and when to engage a doula? What are your thoughts about that?